So good morning, everyone. In today's session, we are going to continue our discussion with respect to writing project proposal. In the last class, we have seen components of academic project proposal, right? And in fact, we have focused upon few of the points. So we have covered till problem statement, correct? So we have seen what needs to be included in cover page, what is abstract, what is table of contents, what needs to be written under introduction, how to carry out literature survey, and how to write it actually. Also, we have seen how to come up with problem statement. So, while writing the project proposal, now we have introduced the topic under consideration or the proposed topic for the project. We have mentioned the significance or the purpose, the motivation behind the project, why actually we are proposing that project. We also have written now the literature survey or the literature review. So under literature review, we have searched for relevant papers, relevant documents, right? And we have analyzed that material to come up with the review, to come up with whatever are the pros and cons of these methods, right? So that we can propose our own. So in literature review, we actually study whatever are the existing systems, whatever are the efforts, those were put in by different researchers or people, whatever are the existing systems available with respect to the topic under consideration. We actually compare that material. We try to find out what method is being used by, say, reference number 1, what method is used by, say, reference number 2, and so on. We list out the pros and cons of these methods. Whatever are the limitations of these methods, we need to focus upon. And after such kind of a comparative study, we proceed further. Okay, so later on we write down the problem statement. So under problem statement, we have seen that we need to focus upon 4 important points.
Ideal.
Yes, correct. So we need to discuss about the ideal solution or the ideal thing that one expects, right? Then the next point that we need to focus is upon the reality. So ideally, we want the system like this, but reality, in practice, what we have. So what is the state of the art and what is the present status? So presently, whatever is the status of that process or the product or the project, that we should explain, right? So ideally, this needs to be done, or ideally this is expected. In reality, whatever is the status with respect to the topic or the project or the product or the process, if the problem is not being fixed, then what might be the consequences? Those also we may write under problem statement. Okay, so what are the consequences? We have discussed one example also. Like if this problem is not fixed, then what are the consequences? What are the losses? Maybe in terms of the process or the efficiency of the process, maybe in terms of the monetary loss, right? So we can focus upon that aspect also while finally proposing our problem statement. So we need to consider ideal or the desired state of the process or the product. Then we need to focus upon what actually is existing, right? If the problem is not fixed, then what would be the consequences? And then we come up with our own proposal. So that is the problem statement. Okay, so usually while writing the problem statement, we need to think of these 4 points and we need to come up with our own problem statement. Right, we have seen one example also in the last class. Now, once the problem statement is ready, we are precisely now mentioned the problem statement, what needs to be done, what needs to be solved. Right, so once the problem statement is ready, we should focus upon now the objectives. So what are the objectives? What we mean by the objectives? An objective actually is intent of what the proposer or the researcher wants to do, right? And that should be stated in a clearly measurable terms. I'll repeat. Objectives need to be very specific. Objectives need to be very specific, and objectives should be stated such that these should be measurable, right? So objective actually focuses upon the intent of the proposer very precisely, what the proposer wants to do to solve the problem. So objectives are written as in terms of very specific objectives, and these objectives actually meant for solving the problem that we have stated, and that objective need to be clearly measurable. I'll give you one example how to write the objectives. Okay, now objectives actually demonstrate or how to write the objectives. So objectives are actually explaining what you want to know, what actually you would like to prove, what you would like to demonstrate, what you would like to analyze, what you would like to test, investigate, or examine. Right? So see carefully. Objectives are written such that these objectives should explain what actually you would like to know or prove or demonstrate or analyze or test, what you would like to investigate, what you would like to examine, and so on. Right? All those objectives need to be written in a logical sequence. I'll repeat. All those objectives need to be written in a logical sequence. Usually, whenever we are talking about technical report or academic report, the objectives should refer to some technical processes those we are going to undertake to come up with the solution for the project. I'll repeat. We have defined a problem statement and now we want to provide the solution to our problem statement. So while providing the solution to the problem statement, we need to undergo several steps. In fact, the objectives should be written such that they precisely explain whatever are the steps those we are taking towards the solution of the problem, right? And the objectives need to be written in a logical sequence. It should be precisely framed and it should be in bulleted form. It is not the case that you are writing entire paragraph to narrate your objectives. No, that is not a good way. To write the objectives, use the bulleted form. So objective number 1, 2, 3, whatever. So list out those objectives in a bulleted form, and these should form a logical sequence of the tasks or the processes those you need to follow to come up with a solution to the problem. Okay, so in other words, I may say that the objectives are actually defining the milestones, right? The objectives are defining the milestones, those you would like to achieve. Okay? Are you getting me? If you have any doubt, please let me know. Please speak up. Yes, please speak up. In case any statement you have not yet understood. Yes, please speak up.
Ma'am, can you give an example of the
Yes, I'm going to do that. But at least whether you have understood the statements, those I made,
Yes.
or whatever I explained.
Yes, ma'am, I understood.
Yes. So let's proceed with one example. So I'm giving you the example how to write the objectives for one of the problem statements. Okay. So objectives for the project vision-based leap reading system, that is our running example, and we have used or we have referred this problem many times in our discussion. So I'm focusing upon how to write the objectives for vision-based leap reading system. Okay, so you must have understood this problem. What is the problem? In fact, the videos without audio is the input for the system. So we are having the videos without audio, right? That is the input for the system. So the videos are having the speakers, right, uttering some text. Okay, and the lip movements of the speaker are to be analyzed, and the system needs to predict what the person is speaking. Okay, we are not having audio available with the video, so only based on the lip movements of the speaker, the system needs to predict what the person is speaking. That is the problem statement. Okay, and for that problem statement we are writing now the objectives. Okay, so see here how we have written the objectives. I hope the screen is visible. Yes,
yes, ma'am.
right. So see here the objectives, how the objectives are written. Okay, so the objectives are in bulleted form, as I stated. Okay, and as I mentioned, the objectives are actually describing the milestones, those we would like to achieve throughout the process. Okay, so see here, what is the first objective? To pre-process the input video. To pre-process the input video. So the input video is been provided, but many times it happens that whatever is the video that would not be useful as it is for further processing. So sometimes we need to pre-process the video so that in the latter stages of the algorithms or in case of implementation of few more algorithms, that video, pre-processed video would be helpful. So we are pre-processing the video. That means we are making the video as per our requirements for further steps, right? And that is why here the first step mentioned is to pre-process the input video. Okay, now this particular objective is having two subparts. So what are those subparts? Those are also bulleted. See here. So this is task A under point 1 and this is task B under point 1 that we would like to do, right? So objectives are actually the tasks, the milestones, those we are going to achieve, right, during the process of implementation. So this is the first objective, to pre-process the input video. So the first task under pre-processing is extracting the keyframes, right? So all the frames from the video are not actually important for implementation, and that is why under pre-processing we need to extract only the keyframes from the video. So that is the first sub task of first objective, right? Then in the second task of the first objective under pre-processing, what we are trying to do is positioning of mouth in extracted frames. Positioning of mouth in extracted frames. So what it means, we are talking about lip reading system. So even though we are having the entire face available, entire face of the speaker available in the video frame, we are not interested in analyzing the entire face, but we are interested in analyzing the lip movements. And that is why what we need to do is we need to extract only the mouth region or the lips from these keyframes, extracted keyframes, right? So we would like to position the mouth, right, so that we can process only the lip movements or the mouth movements in further steps. This will help us reduce the overall processing time also. So instead of processing the entire frame, we are now going to process the cropped frame. Is that clear? Are you getting me or not? Yes. Are you getting me or not?
Yes, ma'am, getting.
Fine.
Yes,
So this
getting.
was related to objective number 1. Now see here how we have defined objective number 2. So once now the video is pre-processed, what we are having is, we are having now only the cropped mouth regions. So further algorithms we would like to implement on the pre-processed video. So the second step is clearly indicating that what next to do to learn the sequential information from extracted keyframe features using CNN and LSTM. So CNN is the convolutional neural network. As I stated, this system is based upon deep learning. So two different architectures of deep learning are to be used to solve this problem. And that is why the second bullet states that to learn the sequential information from extracted keyframe features using CNN and LSTM. So once the required frames are pre-processed, we need to read, we need to learn from these frames, right? We need to understand the movements of the lips. And to do that, we are making use of CNN and LSTM architectures. So that has been mentioned in the second step. So to do this, we are going to implement some algorithm, no doubt, right? But this is only the task that we would like to do. Okay. In the third bullet, what we are writing, once we have implemented these algorithms, we would like to predict the result, right? So in step number 2, in step number 1, we have pre-processed our input. In step number 2, we have implemented the required algorithm. And in step number 3, now we would like to predict the result. right? So this system is being developed for predicting whatever the person is speaking, right, by reading the lip movements, right? So whatever is the prediction would be the result of our system. Okay, so whatever is the algorithm, now we are going to test it here. We are going to test our algorithm here. Okay, so we are predicting the result of the algorithm. Okay, now once we have got the results of our algorithm, most important task is to analyze the performance of the developed system. This is really very important bullet. So almost in all the projects, we need to analyze the performance. So we should have this particular objective in any of the project objectives, right? So whatever we do, whatever we build, whatever we develop, whatever we implement, we should analyze how that system behaves, how correctly the system is giving us the results. So the fourth objective that has been written here is to analyze the performance of the developed system. Okay, so here what actually we do, whatever are the predicted results, we are using some data set for that. So in fact, whatever is being uttered by the person, we know it in advance. So we are validating whether the predicted result is correct, right? If it is incorrect, then once again what we need to do, we may need to go once again to the algorithm. We need to modify some parameters, we need to tune some parameters, and once again we can perform these steps, right? But in all, these four are the objectives, those are identified for this particular project. So this is how you should write the objectives. So every objective is actually related with some technical process that you are going to follow to achieve this, right? These are measurable. Okay, so at every step you are actually implementing some algorithm. For extracting keyframes, you are following some algorithm. For positioning of mouth in the extracted frames, you will be following some algorithms. To learn from the keyframes, right, you are following some algorithm wherein you may use the architectures like CNN and LSTM, right? To predict the result, you are following some algorithm. So all those steps are actually dealing with some process that you should perform to come up with the final result, the final outcome of your project. So objectives should be bulleted. Those need to be very specific. Every objective should be measurable. So every objective should be associated with some technical process, some algorithm, right, that you are going to perform to carry out that particular task. So whenever you achieve all those steps, those you have mentioned, whenever you achieved all those objectives, those you have mentioned, you are done with your project. So ultimately, the assessor or the examiner is also going to see whether you have achieved all your objectives. Right? So your project will be assessed afterwards based on the objectives. So objectives, writing the objectives is really very important. Okay. So I hope you must have understood. If you have any doubt, please let me know. So let's proceed now. So we are done with the objective. So we know now we have defined the problem statement, and to solve that problem, we have defined our objectives. So once we achieve all those milestones, once we achieve all those objectives, we may say that we have provided the solution for the problem. Okay. Now, the next part is the scope of the project. So scope actually tells the readers the amount of detail you plan to cover. Scope is what you are going to include and what you are not going to address. So it tells the readers the amount of detail that you are planning to cover under this project, right? If you are having any limitations while building the project, you are supposed to state those limitations as well. Okay, so let me give you once again the example. How do we write the scope? So once again, I am explaining how to write the scope using the same project, that is vision based leap reading system. Okay, so for this system, how we have identified the scope, please see here what has been mentioned. The proposed work will consider frontal videos of the individual speakers uttering a single word. See here, we are mentioning the scope. So what we are going to do in this project? In fact, what is expected? Ideally, whatever may be the video, okay, whatever is the person speaking, we are supposed to understand the lip movements and we should be able to come up with the speech. Okay, but instead this is ideal situation. Okay, but it is not possible, or the project scope is actually limited. So what has been experimented in this project? The proposed work will consider frontal videos of the individual speakers uttering a single word. So while building this solution, what the team has suggested to do, right? The team has some limitations, and what they are trying to do, they are building a system that will take only the frontal videos, only the frontal videos. So if the person is speaking, no doubt, but if the lip movements are not visible because the person or the frontal view is not available of the person, then it may not be possible to read the lip movements because the lips are not clearly visible, right? So that is the scope, that is the limitation. So what is expected? It is expected that the videos, those the system will analyze, should be acquired in a frontal orientation, frontal direction. So the entire face of the person should be visible. Then and then only the lip movements can be analyzed. Okay, so it has been mentioned clearly. The proposed work will consider frontal videos of the individual speakers. Also, it has been mentioned here. See, individual speakers. If in a single frame of the video, if two people are there, then this particular solution is not going to address that. If in individual frame only one person is there, then only the system will work. So that is one more scope that has been mentioned, right? So frontal videos and individual speaker. Also, it has also been mentioned that uttering a single word, uttering a single word. So as this is the initial task, okay, it would be very difficult to predict the entire sentences or the entire speech from a person. Instead, in this initial work, it has been limited, the scope has been limited such that the speakers are uttering a single word at a time. So whatever are the lip movements, those are being acquired for the single word, right? Not for the entire sentence. Okay. Now, what next has been mentioned? The language used is English. So if the person is speaking in any of the language, obviously the words those are being uttered will be different, right? The pronunciation will be different. So we need to stick to a particular language. So here to implement this, the language used is English. Okay, now what next? The present work will initially use only one data set for performing the experiments. So once again, the scope has been limited. The experimentation will be performed based upon only one data set in this work, right? What next? The pre-trained CNN architectures will form the baseline. So what does this mean? The proposers are proposing to use deep learning and the CNN architectures, right? So if you know, I don't know whether you know or not, but if you know how the deep learning works, right? So deep learning in fact requires huge amount of data for training, right? But there are several pre-trained architectures available, pre-trained architectures. So if we use those pre-trained architectures, the training time can significantly be reduced, right? And that is why it has been mentioned clearly that the pre-trained CNN architectures will form the baseline, meaning to implement the CNN and LSTM, they are proposing to make use of pre-trained architectures initially, and then further whatever is the data set available with the researchers, they are going to make use of that data set for further processing, right? So this is how actually for this particular problem statement the scope is being defined. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the next point that we would like to cover while writing the proposal for the project is the proposed work now. So we have defined problem statement. We have defined the objectives to come up with the solution for the problem, right? We have also determined the scope of our problem. So what we are going to consider, what are the limitations, that has already been mentioned. Okay, now under proposed work we are supposed to write the proposed methodology to carry out the task. So the points those we should include under methodology are: what type of work is being conducted, how the work will be conducted, what data or what information will be used, and how it will be obtained, what assumptions will be made, if any. It should also convey the appropriateness of the data for answering the problem statement. It should describe the techniques for analyzing the data to achieve the objectives, right? A description regarding the instruments or the algorithms or the procedures to be used in gathering the data should also be provided. The algorithms, those we are going to implement to come up with the solution, those also need to be described, right? The available data sets to be used, those need to be mentioned, right? So proposed work actually proposes the methodology that is being used to implement the project, right? So typically under methodology we provide a block diagram, right, or a layout. So that block diagram typically describes the important tasks those you are going to perform, right? Then every task as I mentioned, every task is associated with some kind of algorithm. So what algorithms you have identified, which algorithms you have identified, those you are going to implement, that you should write. What is the data set available, or if you are going to prepare your own data set, how you are going to prepare that data set. If you are making use of the available data set, then which data set you are going to make use of. Everything need to be clearly mentioned, right? Or in other words, I may say whatever are the objectives, those we have defined. So these are the objectives, those we have defined, right? To achieve each and every objective, whatever is the methodology required, that needs to be written under the proposed work. You have understood the methodology. Typically, under methodology, we should draw a block diagram that depicts the process that we are going to carry out, right? As I mentioned, please note down these hints while writing the methodology. Whatever are the objectives, those we have proposed, the work to be carried out to achieve each objective need to be included in our methodology. So if I am writing the objective as to pre-process the videos, then how I am going to pre-process the videos, how I am going to extract the keyframes, how I am going to locate the mouth region, what are the algorithms those I am going to use, everything need to be mentioned in methodology. Right. In the second step, what I have mentioned under objective, to learn the sequential information, right, from the extracted keyframe features using CNN and LSTM. So to achieve that objective, what I need to do? I need to implement CNN. I need to implement LSTM. As it has been mentioned, the pre-trained CNN network is being used. Right. So how I'm going to work with that CNN, how many layers I'm going to utilize, how the features are being extracted, how it is being further processed by LSTM, all those algorithms I need to mention. Is that correct? Are you getting me? I need to mention about the data set, right? To implement everything, I need some data. No? So from where I'm going to get that data, whether I'm going to create my own data or whether I'm going to use some data set that has already been available, I need to mention that. Correct? If I'm having any assumptions, I should also mention those assumptions. Once I have done with the methodology to be used, what next we are going to do? In the next part, under proposed work, we should provide the hardware and software requirements. So under software and hardware requirements and availability, we are supposed to mention whatever are the hardware requirements to implement the project. We need to mention what kinds of software we are going to use, which language we are making use of to implement it, what are the frameworks those are being used, any tools those need to be used, any other devices those are required to be used, right? So everything we should mention about hardware, software, any devices, technologies to be used, frameworks to be used, right? Also, in case of any specialized requirement, so if the hardware is available, no issues. If software is available with us, no issues. If we are using any open source technologies, no issues at all. Right? But still we should mention whatever are the technologies, languages, platforms, frameworks, softwares, hardware we are making use of. Okay? But if we are supposed to use any specialized device, or if it is the project that project under IoT domain, then it may require to use some sensors, some interfaces, something like that. So if there is any specialized requirement, then we need to provide the budget for the required equipments. And also it would be better if we provide the source of procurement. If you are going to procure that, if you are going to purchase that, then what is the source of procurement? That also you can mention here. So in this particular section, you should provide appropriately the estimate, if any. If you need to buy something special to implement your project, you are supposed to write it. Is that okay? Any doubts so far?
No, ma'am.
Shall I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Shall I proceed? Yes. Thank you. Now, the next point in our report is the schedule. Now, see here, the flow also is really very important, right? So, flow actually determined the problem statement. Then we propose the objectives of the work. Then to achieve these objectives, what would be the proposed methodology that we have mentioned? To implement that, whatever are the requirements with respect to hardware, software that we have mentioned, budget we have mentioned. Now, the next important point that we should consider is about the timeline. So we need to clearly mention what is the schedule, how we are going to implement it, what would be the timeline. Okay, so to do that, you should split the entire work into subtasks. Right? So split your entire work into subtasks. These subtasks might be, you may begin from literature survey itself. Okay, so literature survey, planning, development, installation of the systems, maybe testing, writing the reports or articles. These are the possible tasks those you need to undertake. Every task requires some time, right? So accordingly, you need to come up with a timeline, you need to come up with a schedule. Right? So precisely we need to mention the amount of time required with respect to each task. So we should precisely mention that. And what next? Once we have divided our entire work into the subtasks, right? And whenever we have mentioned the timeline that is required to fulfill each subtask, right? We are having this information in a tabular form. Now, what next? We should come up with a Gantt chart. So this is a type of bar chart that actually illustrates a schedule for the project. So in our tutorial sessions, we'll be looking at few such tools. Those can be used to prepare such kind of a Gantt chart. Okay, so how the chart looks like. This is one simple example that I'm having here. So in fact, this example of a chart, actually this is a project for 3 years. So this is a research project. Whatever I'm demonstrating right now, it was available with me, and that is why I'm demonstrating with that. So this is actually a chart that is showing the timelines for different tasks. Those need to be performed. Okay, and this project is for 3 years. So see, only understand how it has been drawn. So see here on this axis, x-axis of the chart, what we have. We are having from 0 to 36. So those are the months. As this is the 3 years project, right? We have distributed the tasks in terms of months. Okay, if this is the project for 6 months, 4 months or a year, then what you can do is you can split your tasks into the number of weeks required. Okay, now what are the subtasks? See here, these are the subtasks. Those are being identified. These are the subtasks. So depending upon whatever is the project, we can understand, we can come up with these subtasks. Those we should perform. See here, literature survey is one of the subtasks. Study of experimental setup, that might be another subtask. Right? So this is how the subtasks are being shown here. Now see here the timeline, how the timeline is being defined. So for literature review, as this is the 3-year research project, literature review actually takes lots of time because this is really very important task to come up with the problem statement and all. So literature review is being considered for first 5 months. It may happen that some tasks are going in parallel. So it may happen that if you are having 3 to 4 team members in your project, then one person is working on some task, another person is working on some other task. It may also happen. So parallelly, more than one tasks may go. Right? So accordingly, we need to, some tasks, no doubt, some tasks are sequential tasks, meaning unless the earlier task gets completed, we can't proceed with the next task. So few tasks are sequential, but few tasks can be undertaken parallelly. So whatever are such kinds of tasks, those can be undertaken parallelly. We may consider the timeline accordingly. So these two tasks can be undertaken parallelly. Right? Then this is the timeline. These are the timelines. Here in this particular example, these are depicting the number of months required. So once again, see, these two tasks are overlapped somewhere. Okay, so this is how we should come up with a Gantt chart showing actually the timeline for our project. Now please see here what we can do. We have described our objectives earlier. We have mentioned our objectives, right? So we may also show when we are going to achieve our objective number 1, when we are going to achieve our objective number 2. So to carry out, to achieve objective number 1, we need to perform these tasks. To achieve objective number 2, we are supposed to perform these tasks. Likewise. So in the Gantt chart, you should also determine the timelines for achieving your objectives. Okay, if there are any progress evaluations of your project, then that also you need to specify. So this is progress 1. So yearly progress report need to be submitted for this 3-year project. So yearly progress 1, progress 2 has also been mentioned. Right? One task, please see here, preparing for publications, documentation and report writing. These also are considered as separate tasks, and some time is being provided to these tasks. See, documentation and report writing is one task, but report needs to be written after 1 year, after 2nd year, or whenever there is a progress report presentation, we should write the report as well. So whenever you are supposed to submit the progress, at that time you need to write the report. So we are having here several timelines, right, for writing the report. So this is, I hope you must have got the idea how to come up with the schedule. Shall I proceed? If you any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Right. So let's proceed now with the last point in our proposal, and that is the references and bibliography. So as I mentioned earlier also, many times while writing the literature review, okay, we need to search for existing systems, existing papers, some references, some books, and so on, right? So under references, we are listing the material that we are referring to come up with this proposal. Each reference is linked to specific citation in the text. What we mean by this citation? While writing the proposal, if I am referring to some material from some paper, properly I need to cite that. So some work I am referring to, and this work is being obtained, or this work is being referred from some paper, that should be listed in reference, and I need to provide the citation here. So if I'm writing here 2, this means that this reference is the second reference in the references list that I'm citing here. So from that paper, from that reference, I'm using some material, right? So this is how we need to put the references. To write the references, we are having several formats. Typically, we go with IEEE format for writing the references. I'll be demonstrating that in tutorial sessions. Also, we need to write the bibliography if any. So references are actually linked with the specific citations in the text. Okay. There is a difference in reference and bibliography. What is bibliography? It is list of all the resources, list of all these sources. Those are being used to generate the ideas or the topic. Right? So bibliography may have the cited entries, or it may also have the material that has not been cited in the report or in the proposal. Right? So bibliography may include the books, once again the papers, whatever it may be. But references references must be cited in the text. Under bibliography, whatever are the lists of documents, those may be cited in the text, or those may not be cited in the text. But we have used those materials or those references or those texts to come up with our document. Right? So that is the difference in references and bibliography. So this is the last point in our proposal. So I hope you must have understood the content and you will be able to write your own project proposals. In case of any doubts, difficulties, you may raise the questions. Otherwise, we are going to conclude. Any questions? Yes?
What is citation?
Citation is, see here, this I mentioned, no? So I'm referring to some material from some paper. So under references, actually, I'm having reference number 1, name of the paper, reference number 2, another name of the paper, reference number 3 may be a website, reference number 4 may be a book, whatever it may be. So under references, I'll be listing out all the sources those are being used. But under references, I'll be listing out the sources which are cited in the text. Meaning, if I'm using some material from this paper, or if I'm using some material from this paper, while writing the proposal, then in literature review, for example, I have used some material from here, then I'll be specifying, this is citation, I'll be specifying from which reference I'm using this material, this word, this text, this concept, this idea. So we are borrowing this idea from this reference number 2. So how to cite that? Whatever is the idea, I'll be listing out, and in square brackets, I'll be mentioning the reference number from where I got that idea. So this is known as citation. Correct?
Okay, ma'am.
Got fine. So we'll be actually working on all those things in our tutorial sessions, right? Meanwhile, you once again go through the contents and try to write now your own project proposal for the given topic, or for own proposal for your mini project topic, right? While writing, if you face any problems, any difficulties, let me know so that we can clear those doubts. Okay, so let's conclude today's session. Thank you.